What would happen if all the ice in Antarctica disappeared? This is not a prediction for 1,000 years from now. It is a question that some scientists are already treating as inevitable, and one that could completely redefine everything we understand as civilization. Have you ever stopped to think about what is hidden beneath the largest ice sheet on the planet? Not only in volume, but in terms of potential for transformation. We are talking about a colossal, silent, apparently stable structure, but one that may be about to collapse, and not slowly. What would really happen if Antarctica ceased to exist? What are the immediate effects, and the ones that no one is prepared to discuss? Comment below. In your opinion, is the collapse of this ice really a real threat? Or are we overreacting to something that we think will never change? Because what you're about to see isn't just about rising seas. It's about an invisible limit that we may have already crossed. What if the planet's biggest tipping point isn't in the sky, but frozen right below us? Antarctica is much more than a frozen wasteland. It is the largest reservoir of fresh water on the planet, and today, some of that ice is disappearing. Satellite images reveal widening fractures, entire areas of unstable ice, and a steady retreat of glaciers that until recently seemed fixed. And the pace is accelerating. According to recent estimates, Antarctica is currently losing about 150 billion tons of ice per year. That's the equivalent of about 60 Olympic-sized swimming pools of meltwater every second. This loss is not uniform. It is concentrated mainly at the edges, where warmer oceans seep under the ice shelves and weaken their foundations. Unlike the Arctic, which is over the ocean, most of the Antarctic ice sheet rests on solid ground. This means that when it melts, all the water released contributes directly to rising sea levels. In the Arctic, the ice is already floating, so its melting has a much smaller impact on sea levels. This is why Antarctica poses a much more structural threat. Its ice acts as a colossal dam that, if broken, changes the shape of the planet. Another worrying factor is ocean temperatures. Antarctica is not melting just because of atmospheric warming. The deep ocean is warming at alarming rates, and this heat is penetrating beneath the shelves, reaching regions that until recently were isolated from direct climate action. This means that the base of the continent is becoming vulnerable, and this process is harder to monitor in real time. These changes are subtle but cumulative. The ice doesn't have to disappear all at once to have an impact. The continued loss of stability alters the region's gravitational balance, changes ocean currents, and creates a domino effect across the rest of the planet. But the real threat isn't what's already melted, it's what's about to collapse all at once. And if that happens, there will be no room for containment, only for reaction. Two of these glaciers, Thwaites and Pine Island, are among the most unstable and monitored glaciers on the planet. Scientists refer to them as doomsday glaciers, not as an exaggeration, but because their rupture could trigger a chain reaction with planetary consequences. The Thwaites Glacier, for example, is roughly the size of the United Kingdom. It is already losing about 50 billion tons of ice a year, and satellite images reveal increasingly deep cracks cutting through its surface. But the real risk lies below. Researchers have detected warm ocean water seeping into the glacier's base, lubricating the interface between the ice and rock. This reduces friction and speeds up the slide to the sea. Pine Island is following the same trend. It has already lost much of its supporting platform, the floating layer that acts as a natural barrier. Without this structure, the land ice behind it is vulnerable, like a wall without a foundation. If these glaciers were to completely give way, the immediate impact on global sea levels would be measurable in meters, not millimeters. But what really scares the scientific community is the domino effect this would trigger, because these ice masses act as braces that support other inland glacial formations. When they collapse, they clear the way for vast swathes of Antarctica's interior to also begin moving toward the sea. This possibility is not theoretical. Deep structural cracks have already been mapped. Some subterranean sections of the Thwaites Glacier are moving faster than predicted 5 years ago. And for the first time, scientists have begun to include projections of total loss of these blocks in global impact models. The logic is simple. The more ice is released, the more unstable the system becomes. And there is a point at which physics does not forgive. It gives way. And when it gives way, there is no time for gradual adaptation. The whole world enters a new rhythm, a rhythm imposed by gravity and water. What if this collapse has already begun, but the true consequences have not yet reached the surface? If all of Antarctica's ice were to collapse, the planet wouldn't just face rising sea levels, it would face a complete redefinition of its geography. With an increase of up to 60 meters in the oceans, the coastlines would disappear, not gradually, but as a cartographic erasure. The map of the world would cease to be recognizable. Iconic cities would cease to exist. Rio de Janeiro, New York, London, Amsterdam, Shanghai, Tokyo, all would be swallowed up by the waters, not partially, completely. Their historic structures, financial centers, cultural landmarks and port areas would become permanently submerged areas, and along with them, entire economies would disappear. This level of elevation does not only affect coastal areas. River systems and inland basins would be flooded by oceanic reflux, completely changing ecosystems and logistical access. Island countries would disappear. Entire regions would cease to be habitable, and most alarmingly, there is no way to physically protect all these areas at the same time. The numbers projected by researchers are clear. Hundreds of millions of people would have to be displaced, forced to abandon their homes, cultures, jobs, documents, histories, not for war, but for water. This kind of mass climate migration would create an unprecedented global crisis. This is not about relocating people. It is about managing a new planet. And unlike other natural threats, this one does not affect a single continent or an isolated area. It is global. It redefines political, economic, and social boundaries. And it creates a geopolitical imbalance that no treaty or military alliance is prepared to absorb. If you've come this far, it's because you feel the weight of what's being said. And liking is your way of showing that topics like this deserve space. Curiosity is what drives this channel. And the more people interact, the more people start to question what seemed harmless. But it's not just cities that are disappearing. It's the logic of the modern world that is beginning to crumble. The concept of territorial stability, national security, physical sovereignty, all of these collapse when the geographical basis ceases to exist. When Antarctica begins to melt on a massive scale, the impact will go far beyond rising sea levels. Ice is also a climate stabilizer. It helps regulate global temperature and maintain the balance of ocean currents. And it is these currents that control much of the planet's atmospheric patterns. With the disappearance of this ice, everything becomes unbalanced. The fresh water that mixes with the oceans changes the density and salinity of the sea currents, directly affecting phenomena such as thermohaline circulation, also known as the global conveyor belt of the oceans. When this current slows down or stops, the consequences are felt across the planet. Regions that once had a stable climate begin to experience extreme opposites. Places that had regular rainfall experience long droughts. Others that had well-defined seasons experience seasonal collapse, unseasonal rains, out-of-control heat waves, unstable winters. This climate chaos hits a particularly sensitive spot: agriculture. Plants follow precise cycles of temperature, humidity, and light. And if those cycles break, crops fail. On a massive scale, food shortages go from being a local problem to a global one. Stocks dwindle, prices soar, and food security becomes a matter of survival, not of the market. More tropical storms are forming. Hurricanes are becoming more aggressive, and floods are invading unprepared urban areas. And all of this is happening as the world struggles to cope with displaced populations and already strained urban structures. The planet is entering an unpredictable mode, and there is no climate model that can accurately predict what happens next. What if the planet itself stopped sustaining the cycle of life as we know it? Because the question is no longer about saving the climate. It is about understanding whether it can still be stabilized. When coastal cities disappear, the impact doesn't stop at geography. It directly affects the economic pillars that support the modern world. Much of the planet's most strategic infrastructure, ports, refineries, industrial centers, logistics hubs, is located on the coast. And when the sea advances, these structures disappear along with the soil that supports them. With the complete melting of Antarctica, maritime trade collapses. Global routes are disrupted. Ships miss ports. Cargo is rerouted or abandoned. It's not just a matter of delay. It's a complete loss of functionality. Without operational ports, supply chains break down. Products stop circulating. Factories stop. Companies go bankrupt. The immediate consequence is felt in the financial markets. Stock markets plummet. Currencies lose value. Entire nations enter deep recession. Countries with economies heavily based on exports or maritime energy dependence are the first to feel the collapse. But this is just the beginning. The territorial instability caused by mass migration, caused by rising sea levels, generates pressure on public systems, disputes over land and resources, rising costs of living and social instability. Governments try to contain the chaos with emergency measures, but reality exceeds their response capacity. With less production, less circulation of goods, and greater demand for humanitarian assistance, the world enters a survival economy mode. Central banks are losing power. The concept of market value is changing dramatically. We are moving from an era of growth to an era of restraint. It's no longer about protecting profits, but about maintaining the minimum functioning of an interdependent global system. Technology doesn't solve it. Automation doesn't pay off. Old economic models don't apply. The new currency becomes stability, and it becomes scarce. And when stability becomes a rare commodity, we start to rethink everything, how we live, what we prioritize, and even what we really know about the place where we are. Because if a transformation on our own planet already threatens the global order, what could be happening out there, far beyond what we can see? Comment below. What bizarre theory, idea, or hypothesis about the universe has ever crossed your mind? It could be about time, black holes, hidden civilizations, or parallel realities. The most intriguing ideas can inspire the channel's next videos. I want to see how far the imagination of those who are here with an open mind goes. In climatology, there is a concept known as tipping point. The tipping point. It is the critical limit at which a natural system exceeds its capacity for self-regulation and enters a new, usually unstable state. No possibility of return to the previous balance. When we talk about Antarctica, scientists believe that this point may be much closer than we imagined. Even if the entire world stopped emitting greenhouse gases right now, Earth's thermal inertia would continue to push the system forward. This means that, with the heat already accumulated in the oceans and atmosphere, some changes would already be underway and irreversible. The problem is that the effects of crossing this point are not immediate. They happen too slow to cause alarm, but too fast to allow for real reaction. It's as if we're driving down a road that's already collapsed ahead. But no one wants to take their foot off the accelerator. Some climate models indicate that the bases of certain glaciers may have already undergone this process. The retreat continues even in regions where the air remains cold and the loss of ice mass continues to accelerate, driven by energy stored in the deep ocean. This is the climate paradox. Even immediate large-scale actions may not prevent certain outcomes. Antarctica may already be in the midst of a process that, in practice, will continue for centuries, without any human command capable of reversing it. And this new state of the planet, without the great blocks of Antarctic ice, would mean a complete redesign of life on Earth. Global climate balance depends on mechanisms that have worked for thousands of years. If they break, we enter a territory where there are no historical precedents. What if the worst has already begun, and no one is in control anymore? Because maybe the real question is whether there's a way back. It's, what are we willing to face, knowing there might not be? For a long time, Antarctica's ice was treated as something permanent, untouchable, a symbol of stability in an ever-changing world. But while the surface seemed immobile, the foundations were slowly giving way, and almost no one was paying attention. This is perhaps the most disturbing part of all this. The greatest threat we face today is not explosive, it is not visible, and it is not immediate. It moves every day, silently, consistently. And because it is gradual, we spend decades believing that we still have time. But the Earth doesn't need bombs to collapse. It doesn't need wars or catastrophic impacts. Just heat it up a little beyond what is bearable. All it takes is disrupting the flows that keep ocean currents stable. All it takes is throwing off the balance of a climate system that was never designed to handle what we are forcing upon it now. The mistake was not underestimating science. The mistake was overestimating the resilience of the planet. Blind trust in eternal ice, in the natural cycle, in automatic recovery, may have cost us more than we imagine. And perhaps the time to reverse this process is already behind us, hidden among the degrees we ignore and the decades we waste. The world may indeed sink before most of it wakes up. Do you think humanity will wake up in time, or will we watch the planet sink city by city? This is the kind of content that needs to circulate. Share now with those who still believe the risk is distant. The right information at the right time can change the course of history, or at least prepare those who don't yet understand what is coming. Here, each video makes you question what feels stable. Subscribe and activate the bell. Being a part of this is more than just watching, is to explore the theories, threats, and secrets that science is still trying to decipher. Each discovery here could take you further than meets the eye, and the next warning could be the most important. What if water is just the beginning? Click on the video that is appearing on your screen and see what else can threaten our planet from the inside out.